Welcome back to Analysis with me, Jonathan Steele. Well, we're continuing our look at Turkey and the local elections which were won comprehensively on Sunday by the AK party. Free speech in Turkey has been undermined recently by bans and restrictions on a range of social media outlets and websites. And there have been fears have been raised that Erdogan's popularity could lead to further authoritarian measures by the government. Now, what does this election therefore mean for civil liberties in Turkey, and what next for Erdogan himself? Will he amend the rules to allow him to run for a fourth term as Prime Minister, or will he vie for the role of President? Remaining with me to discuss this are Hakan Chamuz, Chairman of Musyad UK, Turkey's Independent Industrialists and Businessmen's Association, Nesrin Fehmi, founder and editor of North London-based Turkish-language newspaper Olay, and on the line by Skype from Istanbul is Andrew Gardner, Amnesty International's researcher on Turkey. Well, Andrew, let me start with you again. You seem to imply that the Gulen movement, well, you hardly mentioned it, although I've made a question out of it. I mean, it's one thing there have been all these tape recordings of allegations and they should be investigated, but it is rather extraordinary that there's so many people have their phone tapped and so many leaked phone recordings come out on YouTube and Twitter and so on. I mean, who is doing that? When Erdogan says it's the Gulen movement, doesn't he have quite a strong case?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would agree with that. And there is a crisis in Turkey in that telephones are being tapped all over the place and no one knows who is tapping who else's telephone. It may be there are multiple people or organizations tapping one telephone. I mean, this is a problem which has been going on for years. It's been done for intelligence gathering purposes. It's been used in court cases as evidence against people. And apparently in the last few months, it's increasingly been used to expose things through posting the conversations on websites like YouTube. So, it's important that if there are allegations of corruption or other wrongdoing by public officials, then the way for this to be handled is for it to be investigated and, if anyone is guilty, brought to justice by the judiciary. But unfortunately, we haven't seen any signs that this is what's going to happen.
Well, Nesrin, what do you think? I mean, who is doing all this wiretapping and phone tapping?
I have no idea at all on these subjects, to be honest with you. Sitting in London and all these allegations and media, I honestly cannot have comment on these. I have no facts and figures, and I cannot comment on them.
Well, nobody has any facts and figures, but there are suspicions and political ideas about it.
Well, there are, you see, the way I look at things in Turkey, there are internal problems, and then you have the external forces that trying to influence politics into Turkey for their own gains and purposes externally without naming other countries who are interested in the area as Turkey occupies. So, I mean, things is going to get even more complicated and worse, and it's a bit of a joke. I think all these things should be conducted and investigated by the government, and I put the responsibility to Erdogan's government to get the investigations carried out properly, like it is done in the West. But it's going to be too complicated to do all that in Turkey.
Well, how can, I mean, can you justify the banning of YouTube and Twitter?
Of course you can.
But it actually increases the popularity of the websites. People then go around it and they look more. So it's actually self-defeating.
We have a famous Turkish hoja called Nasreddin Hoja who said yes to everything, and that's what I sound like. Yes to everything. Look, Twitter and YouTube and like Facebook as well, they don't have an office in Turkey. So, for example, and Andrew is quite a witness to this in Turkey, if there is inappropriate contents in that website and you want to get it removed personally, we're not talking about government here. Forget the government. Even personally, something personal has been put up there, you can't get it removed. And that may just destroy your life. And they just don't care about it. You're talking about Twitter, you're talking about YouTube, they just don't care about it.
Who's they?
I.e., like, you're talking about YouTube and Twitter, right?
The people who run Twitter and YouTube.
You can't even reach them to get things done. It takes such a long time to do it because they don't want to process your request, even if it is a court order. I.e., independent court makes an order in Turkey and you can't implement it because it's Twitter or YouTube. Come on. We're not living in 19th century here. A technology company cannot somehow
Well,
uphold the
let me
rule
put
of
that
law.
to Andrew. Andrew, isn't there a legitimate point that these companies like YouTube and Twitter don't really act when there are legitimate complaints about invasions of privacy on those channels?
No, yeah, I think Hakan has missed the point completely, actually. I mean, both YouTube and Facebook have offices in Turkey, and they have facilities for people who have concerns about items posted on those sites to raise them. And one of the cases, for example, that was related to Twitter and an individual account, firstly, there was no complaint made to Twitter in the first place, which could have solved the problem without it going to court. And then this court order that this individual account be removed wasn't communicated to Twitter. So, I mean, it's very clear what the problem is. I mean, the other thing is, if there's a court order to remove a certain account from Twitter, that doesn't mean that the government can take this absolutely disproportionate and arbitrary measure, which has been said by Turkey's own courts to be unlawful, to block the whole of Twitter. And now, some 5 days after there's a court order for this ban on Twitter to be removed, we still see Twitter blocked in Turkey. It's clear that the Prime Minister, and he said this himself, gave the order to block Twitter, and this is exactly what's happened.
Yeah,
so
but
when you have a court order asking for it to be removed, it says a lot about not just freedom of expression, but the rule of law in Turkey as well.
But shouldn't Twitter comply with the court order?
And they haven't.
Well, I mean, there was a court order for an individual account to be taken
but
down.
they didn't take
and
that account
court order,
down.
Well, that court order wasn't communicated to Twitter, according to Twitter.
That's not true.
The whole issue about Twitter having an office in Turkey, what my concern would be is that just as we saw in one of these tapes, alleged tapes, which the Prime Minister has accepted, where he calls the general editor of Haberturk, a news channel in Turkey, and says, I can see this opposition leader speaking on your channel, take this down, and the channel took it down. It seems what the Prime Minister wants is the same thing for social media. The mainstream media is cowed and toes the government line, and the Prime Minister wants the same thing for social media.
Andrew,
this isn't showing respect for freedom of expression.
Can I just add to your point? How about
Turkey.
this? Look, you know and I know they have been broadcasting or putting up stuff on Twitter for months, and you're in Turkey, and I go there all the time, you know that. They've been putting up so much stuff on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, the pictures, the recordings, illegal recordings, and the contents that, you know, you personally, if it was done to you, whether you are a Prime Minister or Amnesty researcher, you would oppose to yourself. But there has been no action taken by this government or this Prime Minister until it was a court order about 3 individuals. And you know this was a court order, and it wasn't my word, it was a director of communication in Turkey who actually informed Twitter about the contents, and they've ignored it. And that's when, and this was done in February, but shutting down was done in March. So these are the facts and information.
I think you're completely missing the point. As I said before, there was a court order to close an individual account of Twitter. There was no court order to close Twitter down. This was an arbitrary administrative order, which the court has called for it to be overturned. Despite a court order calling for the ban on Twitter to be lifted, Twitter has chosen to ignore the court order 5 days later. Why is the government following the court order which has asked for the Twitter ban to be lifted?
No, the court order was ignored by Twitter. There's two different things there. You cannot be a company operating in Turkey and you have luxury of ignoring the entire judicial system of a country where you don't even pay tax.
Let's move on to a different point, because it's very contentious and I don't think we're going to make too much progress. Let me come to you on the issue of Erdogan's future. Do you think he's now going to run for the presidency or change the party laws so he can be Prime Minister for another
That's
term?
$1 million question, Jonathan.
That's why I'm asking you.
I'll be honest with you. This is what everybody is talking about. Yesterday, after the election, when he gave a speech in the balcony of the party headquarters, he said whatever positions, albeit higher, we are, given to, we will be doing it with utmost integrity, blah, blah. So some people took that as, well, he's given indication that he will move up to become a president of Turkey. But at the same time, you cannot be going through a war, political war, that's what this election was, and win with such a landslide, having 26 million people's voters support, and then to leave it all, and then so there's two arguments running at the moment. I don't think anyone can predict what's going to happen because there's a lot of the Turkish political dynamics is different. In UK you're so used to your liberal Dems and conservatives and Labour, but in Turkey it's so colourful, it's so dynamic. People like Andrew and I can actually have heated debates and then have a Turkish tea together tomorrow. It's a different dynamics in Turkey, the politics. No one can really predict what's going on. No one can predict what the leaders will do. There's indications here and there. There's a hearsay here and there. So we're all waiting for some kind of clarity on the issue of where Prime Minister is going to be.
I don't know whether you feel like answering the question, but Abdullah Gül, the president, seems to have been creating a different profile for himself from Erdogan by being being critical of these Twitter bans and the YouTube bans, saying they're not acceptable, etc., and on other issues as well, making a difference between himself and the Prime Minister. Do you think that the Gül wants to remain as president, and there could be a clash between him and Erdogan's ambitions?
In my opinion, I would prefer to have whether it's a president or a prime minister like Mr. Gül, because he looks a proper diplomat to me, and obviously he's more a uniting diplomat. When I say proper diplomat, I mean it in the sense that a diplomat whose intentions as a public looks to me that he wants to unite the country, not split the country. Because the way Erdogan is acting, talking about always with 50%, is like he's splitting the country right in the middle. And I can't see a very peaceful future for the Turkish nation. So it doesn't really matter for me whether he becomes president or prime minister. I wish the AKP party themselves chooses a diplomatic leader that unites the country. I congratulate him for his passion, for his election wins. No problem with that. But I also feel that we're paying a very high price for that. And I think we should unite for the future, and we should do elections not voting on ideologies, and or the Turkish voters should vote on policies than ideologies. Then we'll be a better nation.
That's a very good point. Let me put it to Andrew. What are people saying in Istanbul at the moment? Do they see Abdullah Gül, the president, as somebody who could challenge Erdogan, and would he want to continue as president for a second term?
I think it's all very much up in the air, and there are a lot of political questions which divide people, and this is certainly one of them. I think people are just taking in the election results. It's very clear that they were good ones for the ruling party, and a lot will be seen in the upcoming months with the presidential elections in August and then potentially parliamentary elections next year. I think as Amnesty International, what we would need to see is that there's more respect for differing opinions, and that this polarizing environment which has come about in recent years and months, it resides, and there's a more an atmosphere where we're opposing beliefs, be they supporting the ruling party or opposing it, can be said, and they can be respected, and they can all be shown in the media. I think that would be very positive for Turkey's human rights record and for Turkey's future.
What about the CHP, the main opposition party? I mean, are they very disappointed, and why didn't they do better, really, in fact?
Well, I mean, what they've said themselves, and certainly I wouldn't want to speak for them, is that they're very disappointed. I mean, I think, as your guest said earlier, I mean, CHP is not a new political party. It's one of the oldest political parties in Turkey. It's been in government itself, in the 1990s and the early 2000s, before the AKP came into power. And when they were in power, there were also corruption allegations. There were also, serious violations of human rights. So the voters here are in no illusions as to you know, that perhaps that there aren't even if they want to vote and say we want a party which is clean, which doesn't have allegations of corruption against it now or in the past, and who has been respecting of freedom of expression and other human rights positions, then I think you would have to have sympathy with the people that say that they don't know which party to vote for.
Well, Hakan, let me come to you. I mean, the first 4 or 5 years of Erdogan's rule, the general impression in the Western media and among Western governments was positive, wasn't it? What changed? Why is Western media perceptions and Western government perceptions much more negative now? Was it something that Erdogan did? What made the difference?
I don't think it's something Erdogan did. I mean, if you look at the record of AK Party and the Prime Minister, they've made a lot of progress in Turkey. Turkey as a country has, you know, economically, socially, you can see a lot of developments have taken place. They've actually taken further steps in, you know, being better. But I think there has been a fallout in Western world and Prime Minister's relationship.
Yes, but why?
Recently, and look, let me ask you a question. What do you think of a Prime Minister who is democratically elected and represents the will of people, and then by the support of Western world gets taken down, his party is banned, his supporters is now sent to the gallows, and we're talking about Morsi here. We're not talking about the Prime Minister Erdogan here. What do you think Prime Minister Erdogan or his like will look into the Western world and how they supported the dictators like Assad, how they supported dictators like Sisi, taking down Morsi, who's democratically elected. Western world cannot live with the concept of democracy working in these countries. And when it comes to their benefit, they can destroy democratically elected government like Morsi's. And then you think Prime Minister Erdogan is going to look and say, please like me, Western world. He's not.
You're not suggesting that the Western government is looking for people to topple Erdogan in a military coup.
I'm just saying to you.
I mean, we have military coups in Turkey in the past, they're finished now.
The point I was trying to make was this. You cannot expect him to do everything to Western world's liking. Some of the things he's doing, they don't like it, they may not like it, and they may not see with sympathy. He will not care. He will care for what happens in Turkey. He will care for his power base, for his electorate, and for how things are in Turkey. People like my colleague here are quite happy about it.
I think you have a different. I think you slightly avoided my point. What did Erdogan do that changed the Western perception?
Well, I have my own opinion on this. First of all, I don't wish to be in a position of Erdogan because he came to power, as I said earlier on in my conversations, through using the religion card. Because the parties before him in Turkey used the nationalism card. First time in Turkey democratic history, a party comes in and uses the religious card, knowing that after 600 years of Sultan rule, Ottoman Empire rule, is still large of the community don't accept and sort of digest secularism. So that's where you can either use the nationalism card or you can use the religious card. Okay, he's used the religious card, he became to power. Now, he has to please his neighbors. You got Syria on one side, you got Iran, you got Iraq, you got Kurds, you got Cyprus problem with Greece, and you have to please all these neighbors because when they came to power, they said they want peace with their neighbors. Then you got America, you got Israel problem with the Arab world. Turkey is supposed to be Muslim because the problem here is the West does not accept us as a Muslim country. They don't see us, they don't see us as a Christian country. This is one of the reasons they don't see us as a member of the Christian EU club. On the other side, the Muslims don't see us as Muslim enough because we're playing in between Christianity and Muslim world. Then you got America, which is tied with international politics very close with Israel's existence, Israel's fight with the Arab world, and the Arabs fight with Israel. Now, Erdogan has to first develop a good relationship with America. When he came to power, your question was so he made, I'm sure, he made some promises to America that he will play the right role in Middle East as an example Islamic country who is running the government through democracy. It is very, very dangerous.
Well, he has done that because he hasn't brought in Sharia law
Yes,
or religious state or anything.
But let's come to the recent incidents as well, and this is only my guess. On two issues. One, Syrian problem. There has been allegations, let's call it again, allegations that Erdogan has relations or had relations with Al-Qaeda groups. This doesn't make America very happy, number one. Number two, there was an embargo on Iran for many years by the Western world, and Iranian couldn't sell, as I understand, their oil and petrol through dollar. There was a lot of money had to be. Turkey, in one sense, I think, especially these corruption allegations, may be connected with it as well, that they were clearing the dirty laundry of Iran. Erdogan's corruption was not taking it from the poor. There was a lot of illegal activity of finance around Turkey. These two issues, Syrian issue, Iran issue, upset America, and that's why the relations has broke down.
Syria, Al-Qaeda and Iran.
That's my opinion.
Okay, well, I think on that note, we'll have to end. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk about Turkey again in the future. Thank you very much, Andrew Gardner. Thank you, Nesrin Fehmi. Thank you, Hakan Chamuz. And thank you, of course, for watching.